right, welcome to the Good Leader Podcast. I'm your host, John Martinez, and I'm with Michael Reyes today. He's a MMA fighter out of Oxnard, Ventura County. My hometown, my turf. Me and Michael met through Instagram. We also go to the same gym, and we always kind of had the same kind of. We've always talked about having a lot of the same goals in mind, and I think that's what the whole podcast is about, right? We're kind of reaching out to guys and
Yeah.
having people on here that talk about their journey, and his is very interesting because right now I would say he's in the midst of his journey. He's training. He's a dad. He's a coach. So, Michael, if you want to go into just like maybe introduce yourself a little bit and what brought you to MMA.
Okay. All right. So my name is Michael Reyes. My nickname is Malicious, so they call me Malicious Mike. Been doing combat sports for more than half my life. I started when I was 14 years old. Actually, I started boxing when I was 12 years old. Did it for a little bit, and then at 14 years old, I started wrestling. Did really well there, and straight out of high school, I wasn't sure what direction my life was going in, as most of us are when we're fresh out of high school. And I had some friends that had been trying to get me to an MMA gym, and I said no. And I love wrestling. I wanted to wrestle in college. They're like, "Come on, do MMA, do MMA." I'm like, "Nah, nah, I don't want to get punched in the face." Like, I had boxed a little bit, and it just wasn't like comfortable, I guess, and I had to find that comfort in the discomfort. And one day we were supposed to go to the mall or somewhere in Ventura, and we made like a wrong turn. And I'm like, what the heck? Well, this isn't like towards the mall. And they're like, oh, we're going to the gym. And back in those days, I used to, this was the summer, so I was wearing shorts and a tank top. So it wasn't like I wasn't dressed for the occasion. I was already dressed, and we pulled up to the gym. The coach there was like, let's go ahead and get on the mat. And I was timid to do it, but my friends gave me that peer pressure, and I started doing it. And I had maybe about 5 days experience, and then I had my first fight on my
Oh shit,
first week of training. Yeah,
that's really
yeah,
nice.
this was in 2010. So I've been doing this for about 15 years now. So, it's been a great journey full of ups and downs. And, right now where I'm at in my career, I'm dealing with some injuries. So I'm going to be sidelined for about another year, and, take the time to really focus on recovering and giving it my best when I return to the sport.
Do you feel like because you had that fight so early in your career that it helped you, do you think you need it longer? Or just like almost like might as well just get this out the way?
Well, I didn't want to do it at all. So I trained like a week. My friend had, months of experience. Like, wrestling season ends around February, March, and we're talking like August, September. So, he had months of training before he fought. And, I show up just to help him warm up. So I bring my mouthpiece, bring my gloves, and just ready to help him get ready for his fight. And the coach at the time was like, my coach at that time came up to me, and he's like, "How much do you weigh?" And I kind of inflated it because I knew where he was going. So I like heightened my weight. I'm like, "Oh no, I'm like 145." And he's like, "Oh, perfect. You're gonna fight. You're gonna fight today." And I was like, "No, I'm not." And he told me, "You're fighting today." I've always been like a shy, timid person. I haven't always been the most outgoing, the loudest person in the room. So I feel like if he hadn't like peer pressured me to start, fighting then and there, I don't think I would have done it. Even though I was already like in the sport, like I don't think I would have had like the guts to be like, "Hey, put me in there to fight." And
Yeah.
I live by the motto, get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that put me in a very uncomfortable place, and I had to learn to fight through that and be able to perform past that discomfort. And that helped me out later on down the line, because then I started fighting professionally, and I'm fighting on TV. I'm fighting on live streams, fighting on I was fighting on cable TV for a time. Then I was fighting on UFC Fight Pass, and there's just so much pressure. Besides, fighting in front of hundreds, if not, like thousands of people, it's gonna be uploaded and put it on the internet, and all that stuff like goes through your mind. So me getting thrown in there right away set me up for the career that I was eventually gonna have in the sport.
What are some of the mental pressures that come along with it? Like you said, knowing like, hey, I got to go out there, and like we kind of talked about a little bit off camera, like you kind of go into the ring by yourself, and there's no, and once whatever happens, kind of happens. Does that was that something you had to learn to like deal with, and how do you deal with it? Where I think some people, and the reason I ask that is because, in life, I think we've seen how much mental plays into like every part of life. And if you don't deal with it like in good ways, it can almost like beat you before, your fight in life starts or actual fight starts. So what were some of the things that people don't see about how you feel about it, and how it, maybe the conversations that you're able to have with the people around you? Because I feel like sometimes things get so glamorized, it's almost like all I'm thinking about is fighting. I'm gonna go in there, destroy this dude, and it's like, but we all know behind the scenes, like, sometimes it's not like that. You know what I mean? You're kind of like, okay, but we only can fight in the people who we lose trust to kind of say, hey, this is how I'm like really feeling about it, and it's not always a bad thing. It's just sometimes you're feeling just different ways about it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, we see a lot of the sport on the surface level. Like you said, this guy going in like 100% confidence. Oh, I'm gonna tear this guy up. I'm gonna win. I'm gonna knock him out. But we don't really see all the insecurities that that person's harboring on the inside. Like, damn, I'm gonna fight somebody that's training to kill me. They're equally as good, if not better than me. They're ranked higher than me. Oh, my mom's gonna be watching on TV. My wife and my kids are gonna be there. Like I got these sponsors that I want to make proud. My coaches I want to make proud. I got these my teammates. Oh man, like your
Yeah.
head's going everywhere. Your mind's going everywhere. And there's so much stress, and I think people can really relate to that because we find ourselves in moments in our day-to-day lives where we just feel overwhelmed with things, and we may have like one task in front of us, but we're thinking about everything else in life and our heads just going everywhere. And we just got to lock in and focus on the task in front of us. And I'm not perfect, like if you could see it with my record, like my record's not perfect. I'm not an undefeated fighter, and a lot of those times where I came up short, and not because my opponent was out of my league, or, they were much better than me, or, they came from a better camp, or any of those factors. It ended up coming down to my self-belief, the confidence that I came in with. And when I have that confidence, man, I execute my game plan 100%. I do whatever my coaches tell me. And I finish the fight as confident as I started. And then there's the fights where I go in confident, and maybe somewhere along in the fight, I'm in a disadvantage, and then I'm like, okay, well, how do I work through this? And then there's times where I'm just like not even there, like where I'm like, I would much rather just be home. I
Yeah.
don't want to be fighting right now. And it's funny because you're just like in the back, and you're like, oh, I don't want to be here, like thinking of exit options. But then, at the end, you're like, shit, like, I'm about to perform on TV and stuff. Like, this is not a moment for me to be feeling this way. And nobody's perfect, and I sure as hell don't claim to be. And we have a lot to deal with as competitors. A lot to deal with mentally as well as physically. And I think like the mental and the spiritual part about what fighters go into the cage with, we kind of just brush that off, and we're focusing on the surface level of how we perform. And sometimes some of us have more things going on than other people do.
Is there any things that have helped you? For me, I always tell people, I always go back to the big three for myself, and it's like, make sure that you're getting rest. Make sure you believe in something, whether you go to church or not. Like, you have to believe in something. Then, kind of having a good foundation of like people around you, like whether it's that mental, physical, and that spiritual. I always kind of go back to those. Like, if you don't have those things, you're gonna. It's kind of difficult to be successful. You may find some success, but after a while, something's gonna give. Eventually. Do you have a routine or things that you do that help you kind of get ready for that you've kind of found over the years of training? Like, hey, now when I know a fight's coming up, I do certain things. Like I start not necessarily isolating yourself, but like hey, maybe the day before a fight, I'm not going to be watching, social media or TV. I'm just going to be paying attention to what I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah, no, I get off of social media. So usually, like on fight week, maybe even 2 weeks out from the fight, I get off of social media, have minimized my distractions. My focus is training, rest, proper diet, and managing stress. Because it's not like you can completely check out of life. Like
Yeah,
I have a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old, and it's not like I'm just gonna act like they don't exist.
yeah, I'm locked
Like,
in.
ignore them and be like, "Hey, leave daddy alone," like, I'm locked in, so, there's still, like, a balancing factor to it, but, I eliminate any and all distractions so that I can focus on the task in front of me,
No, that's
and,
good. That's good. I mean, I think it's good that you actually don't like kind of cut them out. I think sometimes people think that the more things that you don't have in your life, it's almost like a strength. Sometimes you see people that are on say that are single without kids that are sometimes like almost, well, I get to do whatever I want. And it's like, yeah, but when you have kids or people that love you, you tend to have a different level of maybe why you're doing things for. You know what I mean? Your tank goes a little bit deeper because it's not just about you. It's about what you're trying to do. Like if you're fighting, and I'm not saying that they can't have a good reason for what they're doing, but if you're fighting like someone who's has their kids and their livelihood and they're trying to prove something for not just them but them for their kids and themselves, then I think it's a little bit different than someone just saying, "Hey, I just want to be the champ," and that's it. That's their driving motivation, and I think you see that a lot in a lot of these fighters. Like to me, I see it more in boxing. I see a lot of I was talking to my friend today about it with Ryan Garcia because he's supposed to fight, and
yeah,
I kind of look at it like you see a lot of these younger fighters with talent, the look, everything, but it's like the desire is not there. It's just almost like it's for fun. Almost like I guess that's the
yeah,
way. And then they're very, I don't want to say mentally weak, but it always seems like if things aren't going their way, they don't know how to deal with it. Where I think when you have a family, kids, loved ones and stuff, like even when you feel a certain way, you have to, like you said, you can't just stop. There's no option to just stop what you're doing, like you kind of have to keep going because they're all relying on you. So there's no, hey, like let me just lock myself in a hotel room and hope everything gets better for a little bit.
yeah, no, there's definitely, like a loss of grit I feel in society, like these younger guys, younger generations, like we they came up in like the YouTube era, social media era, where like you want to learn how to box, you can go ahead and look up boxing videos and pick up on it, study it, and these guys get really good really fast. Like, and it's such a high paced world that they're growing up in is that they can watch videos and practice what they're seeing on videos and really progress quick, so that the level of talent has gone up. But I feel like when it comes to grit and having that resilience and being able to overcome adversity and having that persistence, perseverance, through hard times, I feel like we kind of, as a society, like we kind of lost that.
Mhm.
And these younger cats, like I said, they're like, there's so much talent, but what are their motivations? Like, how bad do they want it? Like you said, as we get older and we have kids and we have family and we have these responsibilities, it's not just about me going out and showing off so that I could get more clicks and more likes
Yeah.
and retweets and etc. I'm performing because I got to put food on my table, because my livelihood depends on whether I win or whether I lose. I'm a believer in the saying that pressure makes diamonds, but it could also crush you. So I think in those moments, like some people rise to the occasion with pressure and others get folded by it, because you know not everything's going to go their way. They're not going to gravitate to all these skills and like what they did when they were learning it. But things don't come quick, and you look at like social media and you see all these people being successful in one aspect of life or another, and you think like, oh man, it just looks so easy. And then when you're faced with adversity, you're like, oh well, it's not happening easy for me, so maybe it's just not meant to happen
Yeah.
for me. Well, I want to be a testimony of somebody that went through the gauntlet, that didn't have a perfect record, that won and lost and had to deal with those fights where, like I said earlier, like where you have the confidence and when you don't, and to not let you may get knocked down, but you don't stay down. You get back up, you learn from your mistakes, continue to progress, and don't give up. And eventually those people, and I want to be an example of that, those people become successful. I had a wrestling coach that he Coach Ralph, shout out to Coach Ralph. He told me when I was a kid, he goes, you're the type of wrestler that he's okay. We have different types of wrestlers. There's one type of wrestler where you show them a move and right away they get it. They have so much talent. They don't do it. They don't make mistakes, and they do it perfectly. So and then you have the wrestler that it takes them 1,000 times to get it. And he goes, unfortunately for you, like you're the type of wrestler that's gonna take thousands of reps to finally master a move. So, but I tell you what, once you master that move and you go against a guy that they got the move right away, you're going to beat them every single time because that person never knew what it was like to face resistance. They were always just, they got the move, they had it down. And when they finally when they finally face somebody that has seen all the mistakes that you can make, that has, it been broken down and rebuilt and broken down and rebuilt, you're going to win because you have that grit. You know what it's like to work hard to attain this skill, and that person did not. And there's a saying too that it goes, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. And I agree with that. I think, and that's what I think that's why, not that sports don't interest me as much as they used to, but I see a lot of that. You see a lot of talented people, but you don't see a lot of that desire to do stuff. I don't watch, I didn't watch the Super Bowl or anything like that, but a lot of people are like, oh, the game is boring. And I'm like, this is crazy to me that people go that far and just to not really try. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that comes down to where it's money. A lot of, money is a good thing. We're both smart enough to know that we need money to function in society and stuff like that. But a lot of it is like, if you're going to be rewarded, whether you perform good or not, there's a lot of people that don't they don't perform good in that way. And I always tell people the way I look at it from, my experience, one of the jobs that I worked the hardest at doing physically was when I was in the army, and we got paid the least. Like we were basic, like when we used to look at our checks at the time, is like we're below the poverty level. They just provide us with housing and food and things like that. But we worked hard, we liked the job, we did all our stuff. And I think that has a um like, you learn a value and lesson that you don't learn if you're just kinda like, "Oh, well, whether I do good or not, I'm gonna get rewarded for it." I think that kinda breeds laziness and complacency, and that's why, like, I only besides, my boy Berto who does boxing, and I'm very kinda selective about who I talk to in any, like, athletic stuff, because if I don't always like I'm not like, "Oh, this guy's popular, let me talk to him." Because if I don't like his attitude or the way he carries himself or the way then I'm like, "No, I don't." It's not about the money or the attention, because it's 'cause I don't agree all attention is good attention, especially, having been on social media now for a little bit. I think the people that are gonna actually last long, like you said, are gonna have some grit, they're gonna have some resilience and understand why they're doing things. And I think all these other kind of flash in the pan things they're gonna burn out. They're not gonna last. And I think we're starting to see that with how people are acting. About People are getting tired of the clown show of things, and now it's getting back to like who really wants to do things, whether it be fighting or doing good or life. And I think a lot of people are gravitating towards people like you said, like yourself, where you're juggling a lot of things. It's a win-loss record, and everyone can relate to that because we all take wins and we all take losses. Not everyone is just rolling through life undefeated. You know what I mean? And saying, "Hey, fuck it. Like this is how it's supposed to be." And I think that makes a better to me, I think it makes a better fighter. If I look at some of the fighters, like whether it be like Mike Tyson, Muhammad Ali, Julio Cesar Chavez, any of these people, a lot of them, you kind of look at them more for how they came back from losses
Yeah.
than how they than like, oh, they were undefeated. And I think a lot of undefeated fighters struggle to understand why some of these people are more beloved than them. You know what I mean? Like, and I think because they can't understand, well, people like to see someone, not that you want to see them lose, but sometimes you understand things don't go the way you want, and then they come back and they kind of
Yeah.
come back better, more well rounded, and they fix whatever the issue was.
Yeah, well, we unfortunately we're in an era where we got participation trophies and consolation prizes, and I mean, I totally understand like what the thought behind it. Like, you want to reward people for their efforts, and you don't want to discourage them. You want to encourage them to stay on it, but at the same time, you're teaching them a false sense of security. Like, what we're taught like that everything should be fair and that we should all be treated the same. And we're both adults. Like the real world does not work like that. Like
Yeah,
if I want to if I want to move up in positions in my work, like just because I feel like I deserve it, or I identify with that job, doesn't
yeah,
mean I'm gonna get it. Doesn't mean people are gonna start treating me like that. Like, I have to earn it, and maybe sometimes I earn it and I still don't get it. So, that type of resilience, like I said, with the resilience that it takes to come up short, even though you feel like you deserve something, or face defeat, or face uh adversity. For 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 people for some people, it's a drive to keep going. If I can make it through this, if I can pick myself back up, like, next time I get knocked down, I'm gonna get right back up. And some people, they just like to stay down.
yeah.
It's unfortunate. Right now that I'm sidelined, I'm teaching a lot more. And that's something that's one of the core fundamentals of what I teach. I teach people, you know combat for self-defense, and how to deal with certain situations. And I tell them, like, a lot of this is not based off your skill. This is based off of your attitude. And just because this is a self-defense class, or I'm teaching you um techniques to hurt people, like, doesn't mean you should go out there and use them. I'm also teaching you confidence. I'm teaching you self-worth. I'm teaching you discipline. I'm teaching you self-respect. Stuff that you don't essentially have to demonstrate by fighting somebody. Like, we like I said, I like to pay attention to where we are as a society, and contrast it with what I grew up with. Like back in the days, like, when I grew up, like, we would get bullied in person.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's a totally
Mhm.
different atmosphere. People bully each other on like social media. They take embarrassing photos of each other, make a meme out of each other. And one person could say it was harder for me. One person could say it was harder for me. But from my experience, it's about the attitude that you have when you face those things. Like, I used to get bullied a lot before I started fighting and training, and my attitude was, all right, this isn't physically hurting me. Like, maybe I'm embarrassed for a little bit, but this will pass. And same thing, like, I would want people to have that attitude when it comes to stuff with social media. People move on to things so quickly. Like, why am I gonna get so caught up? Why am I gonna have these insecurities that last with me for the rest of my life over something that is gonna be old news in a week?
Mhm.
You know, that's what I strive for when I train people, is to teach them that self-confidence. Like, somebody bullies you, okay, whatever. It's not gonna last with me forever. But if somebody physically is trying to cause harm to me, then that's when I demonstrate my skills.
No, I like that. That's one of the reasons, when I post up sometimes about like with some of these different streamers that a lot of these kids follow, it's nothing to do with their level of success, like them being successful or getting money at whatever doing streaming shit they're doing, but it has to do with their attitudes. Cause a lot of it is like you're walking around with security guards trying to start confrontations with people, a lot of they're glorifying the use of like different substances. I've seen it from everything to like meth, thrown to just to be a person that they're not. And I tell people this all the time. It's like you try to look strong, but you look weak. Because anyone that's ever has any like I think anyone who's ever been in any fights or had any level like in Oxnard, Ventura County, everyone knows that like Oxnard is known for fighting and Ventura County. Like we're known for boxing, we're known for fighting, we're known for that, right? Like I don't ever see guys that act like that and say, look to me, and and coming from my background too, is where I'm like all the guys that I knew that were capable of doing a lot of violent things didn't do that. They didn't walk around bullying people. They didn't walk around, getting offended if someone called them a name they didn't agree with. And it's like you said, it's like you kind of it's your presence and your demeanor can say a lot about what you can do. And a lot of these kids, I feel, are looking up to the wrong thing because they see it as, oh, well, they're successful and doing it. And I think that's where it becomes an issue because now they're, well, if I act like a jackass online, then I can be successful also. And
Yeah.
basically, but it's also setting them up to like, one day you're gonna run across someone who's not going to find it funny or who's willing, you everyone knows if you're looking for a fight, like eventually you're gonna find it. You know what I mean? You're gonna run across someone who's gonna give you the attention that you're asking. And that's your energy, like you said, the energy that you walk in with. I used to like the a guy kind of told me the same thing before. He said, the energy you walk in a room with will say a lot about you. So if you walk in a room, respectful, but still showing confidence and people will listen to you and they'll follow you. But if you walk in a room like thinking that you're better than everyone and trying to start confrontation and different things, that kind of shows too. And I always think that comes back to the difference between the man and the title. You and
Yeah.
I saw that a lot as being a cop. I said you don't people think that they can sometimes get a certain job or position in life and that people are going to respect them, and when they don't, they're confused. They're like, well, I think I'm important. It's like that's the thing, you think you're important but you're not important. You know what I mean? The way
Yeah.
you carry yourself and how you interact with people is what's going to make you important and going to make people follow or listen to you, not your job title. And I think we were saying is good about the kids. I always see that when you post up things about teaching kids because that I think there's a strength in helping people that people don't understand. If people that never have helped other people in their life, and I'm not saying they do it on purpose. Sometimes I think people are just living their life and doing whatever they're
Yeah.
doing. But when you actually have to take time out of your day to help other people and mentor other people and things that I say you're not gonna necessarily get monetary gain from it, or you don't always know what's gonna be the end result of it. There's a different, I think, strength that comes from that people undervalue because we live in that me society where everybody thinks they're the most important person and they're not. And it's like there's a different way of gaining strength, and it's not gonna always be the way that you think it is. Sometimes it's by, giving other people maybe the platform or the things that you have, letting them shine because them doing
Yeah.
good helps you do good and you learn from them and you learn different things. That's what I'm always trying to do with our
Yeah.
podcast and what we're doing here is like I try to tell people it's not really about me. Like I said I'm more of the voice for it and kind of have the idea behind it, but the goal is always to kind of, help other people and see what other people can get from it and 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 not necessarily because like you said to me, every time me and you have always met, I feel like yeah, like you said, you're very, more mellow and chill, but you do the MMA stuff. You're not really like look at me for attention type of person, but that's what I
Yeah.
like. That's what I liked about it. That you're more like I just want to do my shit, handle business, and I think that to me is more where guys, what myself and guys like me understand and said, okay, this is a dude that's, it doesn't matter if he gets attention or not, he's going to keep doing what he's doing. And so then to me, I'm like, okay, cool. These are the type of people that I want to like be involved with.
Yeah, and that's what I feel from our conversations and from from what I see on your social media. Like that's what being a good leader is about is being an example, using the knowledge and the experience that you've gained through adversity and challenges and sharing that with people, letting them know like you're not alone. Like we may face some of these trials and tribulations by ourselves, but it helps us to know that other people have gone through it. Having that them like counsel us and tell us like, oh well, this is how I managed this situation. This is how I got through this. That helps us and feeling like we're not so alone. like the other people have gone through this, so I can go through this and come out the other side. And I'm reading a book right now, and I've been writing down, like, this book has so it's called The Seven Habits of Successful People. If hopefully I have that title right. But I've been writing down stuff that that really sticks out to me, and one thing that I wrote down the other day was, in asking a student to teach what they're learning, they instantly become a better student. And I'm really grateful for despite being injured and having to take a time out of a whole year plus out of my career to recuperate. I feel like it's a blessing in disguise, because I've become so much of a better fighter by teaching, by helping people, by seeing the satisfaction or the pride that kids get when they learn how to do something and they're so happy, and then they become confident, and seeing them like change through the course of our training. Some of them come to me with little to no confidence. Some of them come very overly confident, and seeing people get humbled and humble themselves, and then seeing people that don't believe in themselves or don't have courage or confidence start to attain that stuff. Like, oh man, like I feel like that brings me so much more satisfaction than winning a fight, like, which is something, because I do this professionally, like, that's my focus, is to win and be successful in my endeavors. But now that I teach, it's like, oh, I find so much satisfaction in teaching and helping people out, and spreading that knowledge.
No, I agree. It's always a good. It's definitely one of those things where you have to do it to kind of experience it. I learned it from watching when I was in the military. One of the things they always used to do was that when we ate lunch, anyone who was in a leadership position or dinner, whatever it was, they had to eat last. So that's before that, I know there's a book called Leaders Eat Last, but before the book, before podcasts, YouTube, so whatever, social media, when I was in the military was the first place that I saw it where like our squad leaders would be like, "Hey, go eat your stuff," and they would kind of just stand at the end and let everyone else eat, and then they would eat, and they were like, basically, "Hey, our job is to kind of like take care of you guys first," and that included sleeping last, eating last, and so that's where I kinda learned the concept from, and I feel like it's not that it's a lost concept, but people nowadays now it's more about what do they call it? The main character syndrome. They all think they're the main character in some fucking movie, and to me, it's like it's I get the premise of what they're trying to do is kinda like, to feel important because I think everyone wants to feel important or valued, but
Yeah.
I also think that they kind of have taken it to a way where they think for their value comes at devaluing everyone else around them.
Yeah.
And I don't even think they do it on purpose. It's just a lot of things that I see. Yeah. It's just a lot of the things that I see where they don't seem to um, maybe not see what their actions do to other people. Because and that's always one of the things I try to bring up in social media where kind of be careful who you follow, and that kind of comes into the leadership aspect because you have a lot of people where it's like they're if you shouldn't have to make people make themselves look like buffoons to kind of for them to like gain maybe some financial advantage or some kind of attention by being associated with you. You know what I mean? You're not going to be like, let me make you do some dumb tricks or something that's attention seeking so that you can get some financial gain. I think that's kind of where I feel society starts turning into like a circus. Almost like where here, like I'll
Uh,
give go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like, like to what we're saying, like, I don't want people to feel like, because I post things about mental strength and stuff, and sometimes I step back and I try to see things from a different perspective. Like, how would I feel if I'm this type of person and I'm seeing somebody post this and I take offense to it? Like, your immediate reaction is like, well, this guy, like, you don't know what the fuck he's talking about. Anyways, but I want to really get this point across, is that I'm not personally attacking you. If anything, it's not your fault. It's the fault of the society that we live in, and the type of things that we teach our kids, and that sometimes is the flaw. Like I told you, like, we live in the era of consolation prizes, being told like, oh, you're special, you're special. you're one of a kind, and then when you grow up and you realize, like, I'm not that special, I'm not one of a kind, I'm kinda just average, then, that just I can't imagine how defeated you are, like, you must be, and I grew up from a background that was, like, quite the opposite, I was always told, like, humble yourself, work hard," and, that's kinda detrimental too because in the industry that I'm in, confidence is everything. And but I have this ingrained in my head, like be humble. And I don't blame anybody for my circumstances. They are what they are. But I have to be man enough and big enough to recognize that stuff. Like, damn, like, this goes back to how I was brought up. Like, man, like some of us have that problem of being overconfident. Some of us have that problem of being overly humble, being told like, "Oh, stay in line, you gotta work hard. Don't be that confident in yourself." And like I said, in the sport that I'm in, confidence is everything, regardless of whether, people think I'm gonna win or lose my next fight. Like I have to go in there believing that I'm gonna win, regardless of what the stats say, regardless of what the betting odds are. I have to go in there with supreme confidence. So, it's a balance thing. And I think like, we all have to learn that balance one way or another in order to be successful, not just in our, financial endeavors, our personal endeavors, but with everything in life, we have to carry ourselves the right way and be humble about who we are, but also be confident in who we are as well.
No, I agree 100%. It's definitely always a balance and I think that's the difference between, external confidence and internal confidence. So I always think that if you're a person that needs people to constantly validate you as a person, and as soon as they take away that validation, like people lose you struggle. Like I'm not getting as much attention as I'm used to getting. But I think I want to say the way I kind of see it is like if you've proved yourself to yourself you lose have that confidence in yourself, like, because no one could take that away from you because a lot of that stuff is gained through things that people don't see. I always relate this back to, and I can remember it in my mind as clear as days. Like when I was an 18-year-old kid, went to the military, we'd be marching or running, whatever, and it was usually early morning at night, whatever. It's raining. No one was videotaping us. No one was cheering us on. And no one's and all this things. So yeah, there wasn't no like, oh look at what they're doing. Like it was, we and no one really knew about it except us doing it and our families that were there that supported us.
Yeah, it's like, hey, march for the ground, march for the
Yeah,
ground.
yeah, yeah, there was none of that, but I'm thankful for it because it's like now, you know, to me, it's like you said, like, to me, I know what I'm capable of doing, and it's that difference between, like, hey, knowing you it's like you said, it's a very fine balance because you gotta have that self-belief, and you also don't wanna be like a dick to people, that don't believe it's very and a lot of guys, sorry, I think they struggle with, and that's always, my big, not big issue, but a thing that I see a lot of people with now, they're like overcompensating. But like you said, under being so humble that you can't see the value in yourself, that's also something that can lead to, a bad road because now you're like, you may not do things that you're capable of doing because, like you said, it's like, hey, stay in line, don't rock the boat. You know what I mean? Kind of like,
Yeah,
so and that's the thing that you don't want to, like, interfere with you chasing your goals, and you need people to push you. I think, it's a good thing to have people I think that like me, like, I personally been told, like, I'm a pusher. Like, I'm the type of person, like, if someone says like, if you were to say, "Hey, John, I wanna be the UFC champion," I'll be like, "Oh, yeah, fuck yeah, do it." And every time I see you, I probably would ask you, like, "Oh, what are you doing? Like, what are you gonna like, what's your plan?" Like, I like to and not because I'm the type if, like where I'm going to if you are gonna be successful in something, I'm gonna remind you that you told me you're gonna be successful in it because I want you to be successful in it. And sometimes people need that because you need that. I think a lot of people are scared to say what they want or what they wanna do because once you put it out there, there's that expectation of you doing it. And that leads to whether you
yeah,
do it or you don't, and that can lead to, wins or losses, kinda like what we're talking about but you have to do that. Sometimes you need that pressure to do stuff and say, "You know what? I said I'm gonna do this, and whether I get it or not, I'm gonna make the attempt." And that's what really matters. It's that man in the arena type of, attitude. And that's with everything. And yours is with MMA. To me, I kind of feel that with a lot of the times with doing like the brand stuff and the podcast, because a lot of it is people I think people are kind of funny in the way, and I think maybe because I'm older, I just recognize it more now. Is like when you're doing something, people are always kind of like looking, and a lot of times you're gonna see the people like you said that care about you, their involvement and what you're doing at the early stages or when things are not like their most higher. But then as you became more successful, then you start seeing okay, other people who will come along when it feels like, oh, it's going good. I better get on board with this. And you can't blame them. You just know that's how people are, and that's just the way they are. They don't always know where you're going, and until they've seen some success with it, they kind of like I don't wanna say they're scared, but they're kinda weary about what you're gonna do with it.
Yeah. Do you credit a lot of like your strength and resilience and your discipline to having served in the military?
I would say it's different things. I would say for me, I think growing up in Oxnard, because I think, and it wasn't uncommon, at least for me, because I think I'm a little bit older than you. Like me and all my cousins kind of grew up, without our dads, or like our moms were around. My mom eventually got remarried. I think it was part of the military and part of the environment because I grew up like I was never like I never bullied people or anything like that, but I got in a lot of fights. But it always came down to because the way my mom raised me was, you know, don't get bullied. And also I didn't like when I think a lot of the people I ended up getting in fights with because I saw them bully other people. And for some reason that made me want to fight with them. Like that would kind of put them on my radar of where if we had some interaction, I think I already felt some way about it. You know what I mean? Like I saw
Yeah,
them the what?
so I wanted to bring this. I was like, hopefully this comes up naturally, but it just did. So the first time I ever stood up to a bully wasn't because I was getting bullied. I had a friend, and this guy was a Samoan kid, so you know how they're built. He was a big kid, but he was just really soft. He was a really gentle giant, and this was junior high. At that age, kids are already starting getting into like tagging and gang banging and, wanting to get in fights to prove themselves. So there was like, we had like a class bully. Like this guy used to, nobody wanted to mess with this guy. Like even seventh and eighth graders, we were in sixth grade. So even seventh and eighth graders, like, didn't want to fight this kid. And my friend, the Samoan, one day he was getting bullied by this guy, and the guy would push him down. My friend would try to stand up, he would push him back down again, and this was in front of like the whole sixth grade class. Like this was the end of lunch, and everybody was lining up to go back to class. And I remember just like I can't like I had been bullied, and for me it was like I knew what it was like to be the bigger person and not like put a lot of weight on that. But when I saw him, I was like, man, nobody's doing nothing. Everybody's just watching this guy getting bullied. Nobody's standing up, and I wasn't that type of person. But at that moment, I was like, that's it. So I stepped in and I told him, leave him alone. And the guy's like, "What the fuck? Who the fuck are you?" I was a quiet guy, so like I never went out my way to stand down. So, up until that moment, like, that's when I stepped up and I was like, hey, no, leave him alone. And the guy's like, who the fuck are you? And I'm like, it doesn't matter. Just leave him alone. That's it. You're done. And then the teachers got involved and they were getting their classes back in. And that guy just like looked me in the eyes. I looked him in the eyes and I didn't have that courage, up until that moment.
Mhm.
But at that moment, I was like, I'm willing to accept the consequences. Like, I'm standing up for what I believe in. You shouldn't be treating people like this. And, we lock eyes. I didn't back down. He didn't back down, but we both had to go back to our class. We weren't going to stare at each other you know, for the remainder of the day. And after that, he stopped messing with my friend as much. And he never like bullied me or tried to fight me after that. I gained his respect, not even having to fight him. I just stood up for what I believed in and I wasn't gonna back down despite who he was or what his reputation was. And that was the first time I stood up to a bully, and I was like, "Whoa! Like, there's a lot of power in standing up." Then I learned how to stand up for myself.
Yeah, no, that's a good, that's definitely the way it's supposed to be. And yeah, it's like to kind of go off what you were saying is just that yeah, that's that combi I kinda grew up that way, and I think it's because I was the oldest. So I think my whole thing was, I had my 2 younger sisters and then later on my younger brothers. So I always kinda knew if something was gonna happen. It's funny, 50 Cent said this funny thing where he said, "Who am I gonna run to? Myself? Like, who am I gonna call myself?" I didn't have older brothers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So to me, it was kinda like that. And I personally can't remember where people necessarily had a problem with me so much, but as if there was other people. And I've just always been the type that I've never respected people that pick on weaker people. Like if you're trying to fight with people and you're looking into the weakest person and you're trying to bully them, I just think that's like some pussy shit. Like I just and so like that already kind of puts people on my radar. Like even in any whether it was in the military, law enforcement, it kinda told me, like, we're kind of on a course already for if I got the chance to kind of, like, have some issue not necessarily look for an issue, but if this person ever even, like, I felt was even approaching me in that way or anyone I knew, I already knew what I was gonna do. Like, it just I but it comes down to that's the way, like, my mom raised me. I kinda always looked at it, that's the way, uh, to me, like being in the once I got into the military, even in the military, there's bullies, you know what I mean? And so I always tell people I got into fights, like even in the military, I was getting, and but it's because I always was told not to let myself. I was just like, no, I'm not going to let myself. And that's where people sometimes I think when I'm talking about like fighting and things, other people can't relate to it. Sometimes they'll be like, well, is where you grew up. I try to explain, especially for young men that probably grew up in Oxnard, right? Especially during the earlier times, the 90s and 2000s, when there was more gang banging and things like that of that nature. I said you couldn't go to different sides of town without thinking there wasn't going to something wasn't gonna happen. You couldn't just walk up into a party and think that there wasn't gonna be a confrontation. Like you had to be kind of mindful of how you were moving around and doing things. And this was taught to us like at a young age. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah, tread lightly.
yeah. Yeah, it's like and I always tell people that and some people don't understand that. So I always grew up in that environment and then um so yeah, it kind of always taught me to just be more like treat everybody with respect. And then if but I never respected people that were kind of like that with other people. I always kind of looked at it more cowardly type of thing. And I always thought they were overcompensating. And I think there needs to be people like me or you that that I don't wanna say have trained to do violence or have done violent things. People like that sometimes they're the only thing they understand is someone that's not afraid of them. You know what I mean? It's and I think like you said, it doesn't always mean it's gonna resort to a fist fight or something like that, but sometimes I think people can tell when, like, you're not gonna back down and you're not gonna whatever they're doing is not gonna work on you. And I think that comes down to, like, presence, like, how your presence, speaks about you with people. And I used to and that's one of the things I try to get people to understand sometimes when it comes to even the whole good and dangerous concept, because a lot of people sometimes that don't agree with certain things that I'm saying or my view on things, I tell them, I said, "Well, your view is based off things that are not realistic to what actual life is." And I said, there's people in this world, very, bad or evil people, that they don't understand you, um saying that I just like, what is it? Being emotional about everything. Like I tell people and you probably get this, is like there's some people that you can't reason with them in that way. And the only thing they're gonna understand is like you said, you standing face to face with that bully, letting them know you're not gonna back down, or letting them know there's gonna be a consequence and that you're really willing to do it. And when people see that, that tends to change their demeanor and their behavior. Not that they're not gonna try to do it again, but they know at least not to do it when you're around because they knows other consequences gonna come with that action.
Yeah, and you never know like who you come face to face with, and hopefully, like in those situations, that stuff lingers, and the next time they get into a situation like that, they can be more like self-analytical and be like, you know what, this isn't the right way to carry myself, and they can learn from that. But they'll never learn that until they get confronted by somebody like me or you that has the guts to stand up to them and to point out now, how they're in the wrong.
Mhm.
We live in a society that's gotten softer. Like, it's not like something I'm proud to say. Like, oh, I grew up in a time where we were tougher. I I don't feel like that's a flex. I feel like we all have that potential, but it's just how we're brought up and how, the things that we value, the character traits that we attain along the way, like that speaks a lot. Like you said, like how you walk into a room, how you hold yourself, how respectful you are to people. Like all that stuff matters. And some of that stuff like gets kind of swept under the rug, and there's no value in it. Like we were talking about earlier, like people make it about how many likes they get, how many people want to see them, how many people support them. Like it should not be about that. You shouldn't measure your worth through that stuff. You should measure your worth through the character that you have formulated. We all have a choice of who we are and what we become. So I think the younger generations have to really self-analyze, where they are and where they want to be, and you that's not going to be easy. And you have to already accept that it's going to be a difficult journey, and how to unlearn some stuff that's been instilled in you since you were a kid. But we have one life to live, and we better make the best out of it, and I'm a man of faith, and I very, very big on, like, you have a problem, and you feel like it's out of your hands. Put them in God's hands. The world or the universe revolves around you. Like there's a creator. Like there's somebody that chose you to live. I tell people, not all the time, but I've said it multiple times. Like, if you think about it, like when a man procreates, like there's, I don't even know how many, thousands or like millions of potential people that could have been formed, different people, different personalities, different
Mhm.
genetics that it could have been. And it was you. Like already you're a winner. Like you're born a winner. So why do you feel like a loser? You have every chance to make the best out of the situations that you have. Not all of us are dealt the best cards, but it's how we play with the hand that we're dealt that makes it, meaningful. So, I want people to like get outside of themselves. I was watching a video about like a CIA operative, and they asked him like, what advice would you give people? What expert CIA advice would you give people? And I was expecting like, some crazy covert stuff that, like how to be a disguise, how not to get noticed by people, how to, move swiftly. And he said, learn the difference between perception and perspective. Perception is how you see things. Perspective is you stepping outside yourself and seeing things, and seeing
Mhm.
things through someone else's eyes. If you're only seeing things through your perception, not everybody had the same upbringing as you. Not everybody had the same experiences as you. Not everybody analyzes things the way you analyze things. But if you see things from a different perspective, then you learn to step outside of your realm of understanding, and try to understand things from another person's point of view. And that blew my mind. I was like, damn, like, and I'm analyzing myself on what things are what conclusions I've come to just based off of my perception. And well, what if I stepped back and saw things from another person's perspective? Like, how much different I would process things. And, I think that's a tool that was big. Like I was expecting some secret agents, some secret agents, so like
Secret to
how to
life.
kill somebody, and not get caught, or, like how to do this or that. But it was about processing things, and view how you view things, that he recommended for people to look at.
No, I agree with that 100%. And that's one of the reasons, like, a lot of the people that have been around me have always said, hey, you never seem to get like what ever how dealt with depression or trauma, things like that. And I always tell them, for me personally, I never liked the word trauma or anything like that, just because I always tell people I feel like all the things I've gone through are experiences. And I tell people, I said, I've had a lot of people, I've experienced a lot of death, I've been around a lot of death. I know a lot of people that died. I said, but that's the reason that I do have a positive attitude, because to me, like you said, my the perspective and the perception, I could say, "Hey, this sucks. Why did I know all these people that died?" But how I look at it is, I'm still here, and for me to honor, the people that are not here, I have to move forward in a positive way, because what is it? What I kinda look at it like, or do I just throw myself into the grave with them? Yeah, you know what I mean? And start living, like, without caring about things like that. And I think it's all about, like you said, it's like the perspective of doing it. And I think a lot of the issues that we have in society would be if people looked at them from a different perspective and not just from their perception. And even when they don't agree with things, and because a lot of times people want to like have debates with me about political stuff, and I try to tell them, I'm like, whether you agree or don't disagree with something, do you have a better solution or do you understand why it's being done? And sometimes it's crazy because they understand why it's being done. I know this is too much. I know this is okay. So that's telling you if you can understand, then what is your solution if you don't want it to be done the way it's, well, I don't have one. And it's like, okay, well, again, it's like you don't have to agree with it, but understand that that we got here because because certain things happen and certain points were made. It's the same thing as like, I think as parents, right? Like we don't always like our kids, we always want to love them and give them everything they want, but we understand we also got to teach them responsibilities, discipline, things like that, right? So it's not really about what we want to do as much as what we need to do. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to like if your kid's acting up, you don't always want to like, say, hey, I'm gonna take your toys away and ground you or spank you, whatever it is. But you understand as a parent or dad, sometimes you have to because you're like, I won't want my kid to grow up thinking that they can act like this and it's just all it's all right. So you have
Yeah.
to make those decisions. And I think people that have never had to do that, they don't understand that. What's for the greater good? What's for the greater for everybody, not just for myself. And sometimes it's not, it doesn't benefit people. Sometimes think that if you're getting some benefit from it and you're not. And I think as a parent, I think you have to become very selfless. And I think before you're a parent, you're very selfish. Most people. I
Yeah.
think some people are still parents and they're still selfish, but for the most
Yeah.
part, if that switch flips in you when you have kids, you understand what I mean by selfless. Like your sleep, your eating, your schedule, everything is based off what's gonna help them, and you kinda come last, even to yourself. You know what I mean? Because you want them to all be never to, maybe go through things that you went through.
Yeah, and we talked about that earlier about leading from the rear and being the last one to eat to set an example. When I was in high school as a freshman, all the upperclassmen they used to say like, "Oh, freshman, you mop the mats at the end of wrestling,
Mhm,
practice. You mop the mats, freshman mop the mats." When I became a senior, and I didn't do this like consciously. It was just like, it was kind of ingrained in me. After practice, I would mop the mats. And like some of the guys that were in the same grade as me were like, why you mopping the mats? Get the freshmen to do it. And looking back, that was me kind of displaying that value of like, I'm gonna lead by example. I can't just tell you like, hey, you mop the mats. You're a freshman.
mhm.
You're below me, I'm superior to you, so you gotta do the grunt work. I did the grunt work, and I hope that taught them, a lesson on how to be a leader, how to set an example. Like, yeah, I'm not gonna ask something of you that I wouldn't do myself.
Yeah, it's like a course correction, and a lot of people don't understand that just because something happened to you doesn't give you the right to do it to someone else. And that's what I always tell people. My experience as being a cop or something. I said there was a lot of times I could have gone hard on people, and I didn't necessarily, not because I didn't understand that, and even if they didn't always deserve it, right? A lot of it came from understanding that just because something happened to you, like always my experience, especially, getting into the military and law enforcement, it wasn't always meeting good people. So when I became like more senior and stuff like that, I never mistreated people. I never talked down to people. I never, because I was always saw it as just because I was done before doesn't mean that it's right. And there was no real value in doing things like that. All you're doing is teaching people, like you said, like, well, I've done this longer than you. That gives me a right to treat you like lesser than, when really
Yeah.
there's no big lesson to be learned from that. The lesson is more like you said, to show, hey, I'm willing, why don't we work together to get something done and do it the right way? Because there is a balance to that. You also want them to understand, there's hard work that's involved with where they're trying to go, but also that you're not above doing it. And I think it does two things. It shows them, hey, this guy doesn't have to do this, but he is. And it also shows you like, this keeps me humble to remember where I started, even though I'm already past that. But I still gotta, it keeps me a little bit more grounded in my decision making and things that I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Yeah, you have to set an example for people. And that's what I want to do with my sport. The big picture is to show people, that nothing's too hard. You have belief in yourself, you have faith in a higher power, something above you. Like, you don't have to be religious, you don't have to read the Bible every day, you don't have to go to church every weekend or any of that, but just understand that there's a lot more than just your life, in the
Yeah.
world. Be humble in that, and to also believe, like I said, like you were chosen to live the life you live. Like there could have been so many more outcomes. Like if you think about all the wars and all the plagues and this or that, like generations of people died, like whole bloodlines just got cut off, and
Mhm.
your bloodline's still going to this day. Like that says something about you. That's just something profound about you, that you have that resilience, that you're gritty, that you're willing to endure, or that you're able to endure. It's just about, confronting those things and not shying away from challenges and embracing them. Like me right now, like right now at this point, I'm 33, I'm gonna be 34. Most people are already thinking like, about retirement. Me, I'm like, I gonna like immediately as soon as I got hurt, I had, I got in the fight, I broke my leg. I tore two of my ligaments in my knee. I dislocated my shoulder before the fight, like 5 weeks before the fight, but it never really like popped out and stayed out. But in the fight, it popped out. I had to pop it back in. I tore my rotator cuff, my labrum, my bicep muscle, and most people that would be in my shoes would be like, "Ah, just give up." I have family members and close ones, loved ones that are like, "Mijo, just leave the sport." But my mentality, as soon as those things happen, was like, "All right, I got to get right. I got to get surgery. I got to recover right, do physical therapy. I got to, like we were talking about earlier about that confidence. I have to learn how to have confidence regardless of the circumstance, regardless of who's in front of me, what the stakes are, who I'm fighting in front of, where I'm fighting, what time I'm fighting, like who's there for me, who's not. None of that matters as much as having that confidence to persevere. And like I said, most people at this stage of their career, this stage of their life would be like, I'm calling it a day. And
Mhm.
I'm still have that mentality where I can still want to be the best in the world. I know I can be the best in the world. I will be the best in the world. And even though my current circumstances isn't showing that, isn't displaying that, I can't just pay attention to the negative noise. I have to keep pushing. I have to keep believing in myself. And I'm not there yet, and that day hasn't come, but when that day comes, I'm gonna look out into the world and I'm gonna be like, "See, I told you. I told you. Don't give up. Believe in yourself. Have faith. Like persevere. Don't let what people's opinions are, or what your current circumstance dictate where you're gonna end up in life. You can always keep pushing, always keep going. And like I said, I'm not there yet, but I'm on my way, and every day I'm building, becoming more resilient, and I'm working towards what my ultimate goals are. And my ultimate goal is to have a testimony for my brothers and my sisters out in the world that, no situation's too bad for you to get out of and persevere and overcome.
No, that's good. I mean, that's your mentality and everything you're saying is 100% because, it's like it doesn't matter your age. You never know when the fight's going to come in your life. And I always tell people it's different when you have to live quotes rather than just post them. You know what I mean? Like a lot of it, it's and I tell people, the same thing you said, and it wasn't as extreme as your case, but I said where I learned that when I was 18 and we were doing a very long road march and all my toenails fell off and my feet were bloody and I remember walking and thinking like, "This is some bullshit like a movie," but it doesn't feel glamorous, right? It doesn't feel like you see it in movies and you're like, "Oh, like, look at that guy, he's going," but when you're going through it, it feels fucked up, you know what I mean? But you have to remember, like, this is my movie, this is my life, this is my and how you choose to to deal with it kind of defines you later on down the road and then you're going to have your moments where it sucks and like you said and people are going to tell you and whether, to keep going or not going, but ultimately, have to decide it for yourself. But, especially with the way you're saying it, when you still have the desire, then you still lose the are trying to do it. And it doesn't sound like for the wrong reasons either, where it's like, I'm just trying to, it sounds more like it's more genuine. Like this is already a path that you set yourself to, and these are just obstacles you gotta like overcome. And I think, yeah, I agree with you, man. I like everything that you're saying because I think that definitely shows your mind and your heart are in the right place. And some of these things in life, it's just how it happens. We can't control it. I mean, sometimes it happens, and sometimes it's there to test you to see if you really want to keep doing this.
Yeah, it really does feel like a test. Every day is a test. Like I'm not saying this like, oh, I've already overcome this. My head's in the right place. Like every day is a battle. Every day I get
Yeah,
older, that little bitch in my head is like, dude, just pack it
yeah,
in. You're getting older. It's gonna be harder. Like, just think about it. Physical therapy is gonna suck. Think about it. You're gonna train it. You're gonna feel rusty. Think about it. You haven't dealt with that pressure of fighting in front of thousands of people. Oh, it's gonna be hard when you do it. I don't that I acknowledge that that little bitch inside of me is there, but I'm not gonna let that voice dictate how I live my life. I choose to listen to the voice that says like, "Hey, you still got it. That fire is still burning in you." Right now, the fire that's in me is burning hotter than it was, when I'm coming off a win.
right.
Because I know I have more to prove. I know I'm far more capable of attaining my goal than what other people give me credit for. And it's not it's not their beliefs, it's not their life to live. It's
Uh-huh.
mine. And I gotta overcome these things. And the biggest help that I've had in this is my strength. I mean, my faith getting stronger, the strength in my faith of knowing that God has chosen me to for a big purpose, and that I can't just let the things that happen in my life, the bad things, like you said. I don't like using that word trauma neither, but the adversity that I have to overcome, like, isn't a sign to give up. It's a sign to
Mm.
keep going.
Yeah.
And maybe the message that I have for people that are also going through it will only become stronger with the more shit I got to put up with.
Yeah. Oh yeah, bro. That's it. That's how you become sharp. Steel sharpens steel.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Pressure makes diamonds.
Yeah.
Pressure can crush you if you choose to let it, but it could also make you into a diamond. And it's up to you to decide what that's gonna do. If it's gonna crush you, or whether you're gonna be precious afterwards.
Yeah. I figure start kind of wrapping it up. Is there anything you want to say? Any like sponsors or be on the lookout for anything like that, or where you're teaching at again to anything you want to speak about?
Okay. Well, and foremost, I want to thank God for putting me in this position. For allowing me to have a voice that I can speak up and speak to other people that might be going through similar situations. I'm very grateful for my life. I want to shout out my family, my fiance Alexandra, who's been like my biggest support system basically since I started this endeavor. My kids for giving me a motivation that I never knew and was possible until they came into my life. For my mom for putting up with me and raising me and supporting me when I started wrestling and when I started fighting. For my coaches who've never stopped believing in me and that have invested a lot in me, Coach Brian, Coach Haas, Coach Travis, my all my teammates throughout the years. I want to thank you guys for helping me, pushing me, and motivating me to get better. I want to thank my sponsors, the Good Leader brand, for being there for me. Through the wins and the losses. Layrite Pomade, who's been with me for over a decade, sponsoring me. That's why my hair's, so nice. Why this mustache is so crisp, because of Layrite. I wanna thank California. tires and wheels for my boy Raul, who's also has sponsored me throughout the years. I don't want to leave anybody, but all my coaches that I've had, not just the ones I have right now through MMA, but the coaches that I've had throughout my years of wrestling. Also for my sponsor, Next Level Barbers, who I messed up in not scheduling an appointment before this podcast, but keeps my hair nice and fresh on a weekly basis. He sponsored me and been with me, and just all the support that I've gotten from the fans over the years. I thank you guys. Right now, like I said, I'm focusing on recovery, focusing on helping other people out. So, I want to encourage people that listen to this podcast and that feel motivated to push themselves and to attain these skills that have taken me, 2 decades to attain. If they're motivated by this podcast, like reach out to me, send me a message, if you just want to talk about anything. Like, I'm not stuck up like that. Or if you or somebody can really use that boost in confidence, that to realize your capabilities, to be prepared if whenever and wherever you might find confrontation, reach out to me. My Instagram's at Michael Reyes 125, and also on X as well. Reach out to me. uh, let's schedule a intro session, and let's get to work. Right now I'm training people at both the gyms that I train at, West Coast Academy in Oxnard, and Knuckleheads Boxing and MMA in Ventura. So, two different cities, and I'm working at both. Contact me, see which one's more convenient for you, and let's get to work. Let's build more resilient people. Let's build stronger people. Let's build people that can help other people out. I'm teaching people, and my goal is for them to teach somebody else, and for that
Mhm.
to rub off. And for at least, maybe I can't change the entire world at once, but if I change one person and that person can change one other, two other, and that person helps somebody else out, like, then I feel like my purpose was worth all the effort. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, and like I said, supporting me through the ups and downs, and giving me a platform to speak to my people out there.
No, no, no worries, man. I always like it, even, and that was one of the things, I always wanted to make sure, like, I don't really sponsor people lightly, and it's for that reason, because that it's not one of those things of like, hey, I think this guy only when he does good, I want to make sure we're associated. But as soon as he doesn't, like, let me go do something. I don't ever want to be like that. I'm not that type of person. And I think what you said about helping people and other people helping other people, I mean, that's ultimately the goal of the Good Leader brand and the Good and Dangerous. Yeah, I always wanted to be a thing that we kind of start like a movement and a thing, because that's the only way we're gonna get better. A lot of these platforms that I feel like they're bigger and they have the resources, but it's a lot of the same stuff. It's a lot of doom talk, how everything is messed up. They're
Yeah,
kind of just all the negative, and I get that that's a way to get views and likes and people to pay attention to your thing, but that's not what we're about. Our goal is to, like, if the goal here is for us to move forward and find those solutions, find people like you, and to keep moving forward and start making those changes instead of just talking about what needs to be changed and having no solution for it. So
yeah,
make sure go ahead.
yeah. No, and that's me too. Like, I don't just be like, oh, yeah, I want to give you money, I want to sponsor you, like, I want to wear you on my shorts. Like,
Yeah,
I believe in your brand.
yeah.
And I like the message about being a good leader, and I totally fuck with it, and that's what I aspire to as well. So, like, I'm glad that we were able to link up and make that connection, because yeah, that ultimately our goal is to strengthen
But yeah, so make sure you follow us. I'll post up the video links. You can support us at goodleader.shop. That's my shirt. It says do battle and prevail or don't be a pussy. I guess whatever one you want it to be.
it's up to you.
Yeah, it's up to you, whatever fits your mode in that day.
Yeah.
Just go ahead and hang on the line, man, real quick. I'll let it upload and then we'll post it up.
Okay.